Greetings, Moonlight Citizens. Man on the Moon here with another episode of Moonlight Kingdom Reviews. We are back, folks, and we are reviewing. I originally wanted to interview Stone Cold, this movie from, I think it was the 80s or the 90s, but we're going to be reviewing something related to Stone Cold, related to a man named Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's right, folks, we are going to be reviewing the Vince McMahon documentary, Mr. McMahon. Yeah, I didn't see that twist coming, did you? And that's coming right now. We're going to review episodes 1 all the way to 6. And it's episodes of Moonlight Kingdom Reviews. It's either going to take one big episode or several small episodes. We shall see right here in 3, 2, 1. Boom.
This is not a dream.
Kick off. Yeah. The Netflix documentary of one Vincent Kennedy McMahon Jr. Yeah, funny enough, that first episode is titled just that, Junior, because, ugh, that first episode, okay, I'm reading my notes here. First episode of the docuseries, titled Junior, tracks the early days of Vince McMahon's life in professional wrestling, his relationship with his father, Vincent J. McMahon. It's basically the relationship, like, of Kratos and Atreus from the God of War movie, in that Vince is Atreus, little kid, who's like just longing for his dad's respect, and his dad is like, "Oh, good job, boy!" Like, because the way Vince describes meeting his dad for the first time after like living this abusive life with his mother and stepfather, he goes to give his dad a hug, right? So he runs up to him, and the way he's describing it, he says, Vince Senior had a glow about him, and he goes to give him a hug, gives him a big hug because he's meeting his dad for the first time, and his dad just like patted him on the back and is like, "Good boy," like "Hello, boy," or some shit like that. I'm just like, damn, that is some callous shit. You can see where he gets it from. But yeah, it's like, hot damn, man, like that's some cold shit right there. Discovering, like, I don't know if Vince Sr. knew his son existed. Because if he did and he only showed up when he was 12, then that makes Vince Sr. a piece of shit. But if he was older, if he's already an adult, if he was like, no, not an adult, if he wasn't aware that Vince Jr. existed and only showed up when he was 12 because that's when he found out, okay, that's something. But like the fact that his son gives him a big hug and he's like, "Oh, pat on the back. Hi there, boy. How are you?" It's like, the heck, man? Anywho, it also chronicles his time as a commentator for his dad's company, All Star Wrestling, and how he was able to purchase the company from his father. After said purchase, before that, apparently he sucked as a commentator. But it's kind of funny because, he's an okay commentator on Monday Night Raw. In those early days of Monday Night Raw, he was okay commentator alongside Randy Savage. And, he had like the "What a maneuver!" He had that shit. He was okay on commentary in that sense. And he, in that point, I'm guessing he'd honed his craft, but in those early days at All Star Wrestling, he must have been pretty bad. He only got the job because one of Vince Sr.'s commentators, he said he wanted more money, and he wasn't going out there unless he got paid. And Vince Sr. didn't want to pay him more money, so he could quit. And Vince Sr. pointed at his son and said, "You're going. You go be commentator now." That was it. It's funny because I recall hearing a story, not during this documentary, but there was a story at one point that something similar had happened between Vince and Shane. Because at one point Shane was doing a job selling merch for WWE, and he wanted a raise. And he's like, "What have you done?" And Vince was like, "What have you done that would warrant you getting a raise? Like, why should I give you a raise, man? Like, what's so good that you've done that would warrant me giving you this raise?" And he was like, you either give me the raise or I quit and I get a better job." And he's like, "Go ahead." And then Shane quit. Not only did he quit, but he left and got a higher paying job elsewhere than the job he had with his dad. And his dad apparently respected him so much, he not only gave him a job, like he gave him a job, he gave him a better job than the one he had before, a much higher paying job, because he respected that, hey, you were able to go out there and build something off yourself with your own steam. You know, it's the fact that dude was able to go out there and not try to rely on any special treatment because of his last name and stand on his own 2 feet, that in that moment garnered respect from McMahon to his son. At least that's the way I view the story. But yeah, this episode also chronicles, Vince's expansion of the WWE, of the then All Star Wrestling, in the breaking down of the territory system that it had before, because Vince's dad had the New York territory, and Vince wanted to expand all across America through the use of cable television and like network television, broadcast pay-per-views on closed circuit TV, stuff like that. There's quite a few talking heads in this episode. You got Hulk Hogan, Tony Atlas, Eric Bischoff, Bruce Pritchard, Cody Rhodes, Dave Meltzer, Paul Heyman, and Linda McMahon is here too. The documentary also covers the origins of Hulk Hogan back when he had from his early days, really early days, when he had the different name of Sterling Golden. And it was actually Vince Sr.'s idea to call him Hulk Hogan. It also covers the rise of Hulkamania from like his time in AWA, where Hulkamania really began under like Vern Gagne and them, all the way to him facing Iron Sheik, winning the belt, and it all just culminating in the success of the very first WrestleMania with like bringing in of celebrities like Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T, Muhammad Ali, Liberace, all that. It's very much this first episode of the typical from humble beginnings type thing. Vince grew up dirt poor. He lived in a trailer park, and his mother wasn't the best person to be with. His stepdad was abusive, and like he was essentially, it's kind of like an Annie story, like a really messed up version of Annie, where like essentially you're living these terrible conditions with like people who aren't your parents, and then your real parent comes up, sweeps you on your feet, and you go on to live the life you always meant to live. Something like that. That's just how it comes off here. And so far, you can tell this episode was filmed early in like the process of everything. This was filmed before all the accusations came out. When this documentary was what it seemed initially to be pitched as, because yes, the episode begins with a man getting up and walking out, and text coming up saying, as this final episode was being filmed, all these accusations happened, and all these allegations started coming to light, and Vince had to get up and leave mid episode. That's how it starts. But really, given everything that was recorded, everything that was filmed, it's clear that this first episode was a lot more in line with what this documentary was supposed to be. It was just supposed to be a documentary of the life and times of one Vince McMahon. And it really gave off that vibe in this episode, like, because that's what this was. It showed like the whole from humble beginning shtick. It showed photos of Vince as a kid, his first job, his first foray into the wrestling business, and he talks of like his desire to get into the wrestling business, how much he admired his father, his relationship with his family, stuff like that. You know, typical documentary stuff around a figure like this. You get a lot of those early life things, and yeah, it was a good start to the series in episode one. Mhm. Episode two may as well be part two of episode one. Because it feels more like it's continuing off what episode one was doing. Like each of these episodes has a figure or set central figures outside of McMahon that it focuses on as it relates to Vince McMahon and how either he influenced them or they influence him. That and the figure in these first two episodes that it's highlighted would be Hulk Hogan, as it shows how Hulk Hogan himself explains like he overheard talk of Jesse Ventura plotting to do form a union because WrestleMania 2 was coming around. And like the best time to try and put the squeeze on Vince McMahon was right when his biggest show was right around the corner because there's no way he could pivot. You know, it covers the attempt by Jesse Ventura to form a union along with Vince McMahon handling the on the surface success but behind the scenes failure of WrestleMania 2. If you remember correctly, WrestleMania 2 was filmed in three different locations, had three different events, broadcast on closed circuit TV, and like they were seemingly all happening at the same time. Like they would all happen live at the same time, and like I think be filmed. No, they were broadcast. Yeah, at different times. It was very, very strange. I mentioned like on the surface success, like yeah, it made money, but like from the behind the scenes standpoint, on the reasoning that I call it a failure behind the scenes is like Vince McMahon couldn't be everywhere. He couldn't maintain a consistent level of quality across each show. He could be on one show and the other two shows sort of just had to run themselves. They would essentially run on autopilot. And yeah, the one show he was on could be as good as he wanted to make it because he was there to make sure things happened. And the rest of the show is seemingly being done via cell phone, not cell phone. It's like seemingly done over the phone. Just didn't feel right. This is the WrestleMania where Hulk Hogan fought King Kong Bundy. I mean, the previous year he was fighting alongside Mr. T against against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. Now he's duking it out with King Kong Bundy. It seems like, and that wasn't even like the main event. There was three main events because it was three different shows going off at once. Each show had their own main event, so it's like very strange, very strange. And it builds to the documentary builds to WrestleMania 3 along with the headline match of Hogan versus Andre and everything that went into that. A lot of this stuff was covered in that Andre the Giant biopic, so I'm not really going to go into it here. If you really want to know the immense buildup of Hogan versus Andre, all the backstage stuff with like Hogan not knowing whether or not he was going over, you can really tune into that. It's on HBO, I think, and it's a fantastic documentary. It also highlights the disputability of the number of people who actually attended WrestleMania 3. You know, McMahon saying that, oh, it's sold out at 90,000 because the arena seats 93,000. Oh, yeah, it seats 93,000. So it's sold out at 93,000 people. You have Hulk Hogan himself saying, oh, it's 97,173. But Dave Meltzer's like, oh, it's actually more like 78,000. We'll never really know. Yeah, we will never know how many people there actually were in that place. It'll stay disputed forever. The place looks packed. The place looks full to the brim already. So to say, oh, there was only like 73,000, I don't know, man. That doesn't seem right because this place looks full. The stage isn't taking up that much space. I might buy that if it was like a huge, like ginormous stage like the latter WrestleManias would have that ate up a bunch of space and that's why they couldn't fill the place to capacity like a football game would. I might buy that if a lot of the ringside area was all like padded out with the ring mats and stuff and equipment and all that was taking up a bunch of space. But yeah, they had equipments, they had barricades, they had masks, they had all that. But it wasn't as big back then. So the idea that you went from a 93,000 stadium and then when you added all the equipment, you went from 93 to 78 just off what eating space because of all the equipment taking up the spots. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't make sense. Where do those fucking 20,000 people just go? You telling me all this the space that was used up by the ring, the crew, the equipment, the stage, the ramp could fit 20,000 people? Doesn't seem likely, but yeah. Um it's one of the greatest wrestling events and the one of the greatest controversies attached to one of the greatest wrestling events. Not controversy per se, but like one of the disputable facts attached to what is undisputably one of the best main events in WWE history. The docuseries also covers the events leading up to the creation of the Hulk Hogan movie No Holds Barred, because around the time Hulk Hogan was WWE champion and he wanted out so that he could go to Hollywood and film movies. You know, he was being offered a film role, and to stop him, or at the very least delay him from leaving WWE for Hollywood, Vince McMahon decided to write a movie for him to star in. And that movie would be No Holds Barred, written by Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. And to show this off, they show the scene where Hulk Hogan pulls this guy out of a car and he's like, oh, what's that smell? And the dude's like, Dookie. Ugh, Dookie. It's like, really? Yeah, I totally buy this was written by Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan because no fucking professional screenwriter would sit there and like knowingly write the word dookie into a script that you wanted to take seriously. You wanted to be like the pro wrestling equivalent of a Rocky film. And you sat there and just typed Dookie into the script. I'm like, you're not even gonna say it's shit or it's crap. You're just like, it's Dookie. Who's this movie for, man? This movie is clearly not for little kids, but it seems like it is for little kids because they're the ones who would watch this shit and think it's good. Like, no grown man watches and think like, oh, this is great. Awesome movie. Like, no, it's not. You think it's great, it's because you think it's great how bad this is. It's a fun watch because of how bad it is. I mean, hot damn. This is made by the people who do wrestling on TV, and I'm like, the fights are bad. Like, what's going on? Why are the fights so bad? Like, just book Hogan like you book him on TV. Have him brawl with people like that, but do it on camera and film it instead. Like, damn, why? It's the thing with wrestling movies. Why are wrestling movies or movies made by WWE Studios have terrible fight scenes? You're made by WWE. For fuck's sake, man. Ugh. Anyway, while the documentary at this point is more of a Hulk Hogan biopic, it is because it does kiss his ass a lot. It covers a lot of while it's more of a Hulkamania thing instead of just Hulk Hogan. It also covers a lot of Hogan's career as well as also when his star began to fade around WrestleMania 6 and Vince made a decision to put the belt on the Ultimate Warrior. Granted, that didn't last, and Hulk Hogan got it back a year later, which you know, shows which was a showcase of how far Vince is willing to go, or just one of the places that Vince is willing to go because he's willing to exploit real life events for the purpose of a storyline, for the purpose of selling tickets, for the purpose of getting heat. He is that kind of guy. It shows because he used the burgeoning Iraq War to make a villain out of Sergeant Slaughter, turn him into an Iraqi sympathizer, and there was apparently a plan somewhere for Sergeant Slaughter to burn an American flag on live TV. But like, I think network people weren't having that, or you knew like, okay, people are really gonna kick off if we do that. So we're just gonna have him burn a Hulkamania shirt as like an effigy and use that as stand-in for an American flag. And he would just proudly wave like the Iraqi flag and tout Iraqi values and show that he had turned from this all-American hero into an Iraq sympathizer. That really made him hated because at the time people were losing family members and friends to this war, and there was this guy in WWE basically kissing Iraq's ass. So it's like, yeah, that said a lot about the but how this episode showed like there's a bit of a darker side to Vince McMahon. There's a bit of a callousness, a coldness there that this dude who once saw Hulk Hogan as this golden ticket, who helped and Hulk Hogan helped launch WWE to the success it is, and he was the golden goose for the longest time. He could very easily just be shunted to one side for the new hotness that is the Ultimate Warrior. And the Ultimate Warrior, who seemed like he was going to be the heir apparent for Hulk Hogan, could very easily just have the title taken off him and put on someone else in the service of putting it back on Hulk Hogan. It shows that no one is safe, nothing is sacred, no topic is too controversial to go towards. And, Vince McMahon was just that kind of guy. He was the kind of man who would gladly exploit the real world suffering and real world pain for the purpose of entertainment in the realm of the WWE. That was my thoughts on episode 2 of the Mr. McMahon docuseries on Netflix. Here are my thoughts on episode 3 of the Mr. McMahon docuseries on Netflix. As this quote he says, by acquiring guys that I made stars and using them on your show, you're using my, it's not a quote, this is my thoughts. It's like, by acquiring guys that I made stars and using them on your show, you're using my tactics against me. And it's not fair. That's the vibe that I'm getting off this episode because in this one, Vince is describing Hall and Nash showing up on WCW TV, implying that under the implication that they're not showing up as Hall and Nash, they're showing up as Diesel and Razor Ramon. That's how it looked. Like it's insinuating they were there as those WWE characters on WWE's behalf to destroy WCW, which wasn't true, and it was really not true because all it did was make money for WCW. It made no money for the WWE. Like that was the thing that bothered them the most. They're not there on WWE's behalf. They're just there on their own, and it's making Vince said like, "Hey, these two characters that I used to, they used to work for me are showing up on another show, claiming that they still work for me, which is not true. It, like, casts a bad light. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm being accused of something that I ain't doing." Yeah. He talks about how what he says isn't always what he thinks. And he talks about the seeming hypocrisy in how the tactics he used against Vern Gagne in the AWA were now uncalled for when used by WCW against him. Because, it's uncalled for to call this hypocritical because the intent is different. Balderdash to your intent, man. You did the same thing. Okay, he views it differently because it's a different thing because the intent was different, even though in the same thing. Vince views what he did as competing with his opposition. He was just competing with his opposition. But when WCW did the same thing, this is done with the intent to solely undermine Vince and run him out of business. That's just how he saw it. Oh, and Vince was when he's doing, he's like, oh, I'm competing. It's competition. They're my competition. They were doing the same thing to try to run me out of business. It's like you did the same thing to AWA. You did the same thing to fucking Mid South or whoever the hell was out there. You ran them out of business when you bought out all their top guys, put them on your show, and left them with nothing. He Vince McMahon offered people way bigger checks than what they were making to show up on his show and just leave the other promoters in the dust. Yeah. So the fact that when WCW comes in, Eric Bischoff and Ted Turner, and they were doing the same thing, offering guys big money deals and creative control and time off to basically go on WCW, and people were leaving Vince. It was like, this is not fair. Like, how is this not fair? It's the same thing you were doing. Like, heaven's sake, man. Mm. If the previous focal figure was Hulk Hogan, now the focal figure in this episode is the Outsiders. Yeah, in the Outsiders, all the way up to Hogan turning heel at Bash the Beach. It's the NWO focusing here, folks. For life, for life. How Vince never turning Hogan heel was a misstep, as he always saw Hogan as a good guy. Yeah, I'm starting to get the vibe. Yeah, when I was writing this notes as they happened. And this one I said, I'm starting to get the vibe that this was initially more focused on Vince McMahon. But after all the allegations, it was more shifted to focus on stuff like Hulkamania, the NWO, WCW's 83 Weeks of Dominance, things that were influenced by him or that he influenced. The focus shifts again to the relationship between Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff, which then reveals a story that I didn't know, in which apparently Eric Bischoff applied for a job as an announcer in WWE before he went to WCW. Vince always viewed the Monday Night War as between him and Ted Turner, even when it was ultimately unrealistically between him and Bischoff, especially on TV. It then shifts to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, their feud, and the Montreal Screwjob, mostly the lead up to that. How Vince McMahon really wanted Bret to go to WCW because, see, Eric Bischoff was scooping up all his stars, and in order to stop Bret from leaving, Vince McMahon signed Bret to a 20-year deal and a bunch of money. And he then, after a while, once it was clear Bret Hart wasn't going anywhere, it was like, wait a minute, I can't resign. I can't live up to this end of the bargain. This is a lot more money than I currently have now, or a lot more money than I'm actually willing to spend. It's like even Vince present day looks down on his decision. He's like, "Oh, Vince, that was stupid." Like that, he's like, that's what his inner monologue is. Looking back, he's like, "That was stupid. You didn't need to keep Bret Hart. You could just make a new star, like start fresh. Bring in new talent. You don't have to hang on to a guy like Bret Hart that badly that you offer him a 20-year deal and way more money than you actually have." Because that was his idea, because that's what he ended up doing. He ended up, once Bret left, he ended up just making a new star. But yeah, that's just the view of it all. Personally, I believe Bret Hart staying was the right choice, even for the short period he did, because we got his run with the Hart Foundation and the like pro Canada propaganda they were saying and everything that was cool. We got that match with Stone Cold. We got so much good shit out of that. Oh, him signing Bret was the right call in that respect. He made so much money. The ironic part is that once Bret left, they made so much money. they were making so much money that he probably could have afforded to keep him. But it's weird that Vince McMahon said he also told Bret Hart the legal loopholes that were in the contracts that would allow him to leave WWE and try to leverage a better deal with when so that he goes to WCW and earn more money. So yeah, we hear from both Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart on the events leading to the screw job, and even the aftermath, even showing Julia Hart cussing out Triple H in the hallway while Bret was in the change room. Because I remember this, it's from the Wrestling with Shadows documentary. Because they were filming Bret Hart in the last 30 days of his WWE contract. They were filming him as he was going from show to show. He talked about his injuries over the years. He talked about the matches he's wrestled. He's talked about you know, how he doesn't get much time with his family, his relationship with Shawn Michaels, how he doesn't like how the business is changing, and all this in the lead up to Survivor Series. When the screw job happens, he says when that bell rang and he saw Vince there, that's when he knew like he got screwed. Like they had straight up stolen the belt from him. He talks about how he spat right in Vince's face. He just like leaned back and hit him with that pop tuh, spit on that thing. Yeah, I finally got in on that. Way after the fact. Way after the shine has fell off on that apple. I finally got in on that one. Oh shit. You're damn right I did. I got in when everybody stopped doing it. I got in on that way after it stopped being cool. Especially with all that crypto shit going on. But that's another thing. That's a story for another time. Anywho, back to the Montreal screw job, back to Bret Hart, back to Shawn Michaels, back to Mr. McMahon. So yeah, also Bret Hart tells the story of how he knocked Vince flat on his ass just with one punch, just bam, knocked him out cold as he went backstage, to just like it was one of those things where like Vince well, apparently the Undertaker went to Vince's office, bashed the door down and he's like, you gotta make this right. Like you gotta go back there and talk to him. So, McMahon goes there, he goes in the locker room. The Wrestling with Shadows crew is asked to leave. I wish they'd stayed. I wish we got some of that footage, or one of them just put a camera down near the shit so we get the sound. Like, man, like something. Wish we could have got something. Goddamn. But we got none of that. It would have been nice, Bret Hart talks about how he knocked Vince out. He managed to, because Vince was like covering up, apparently. It was like a wrestling tussle. So he was able to sneak an uppercut right in Vince's face, knocking him flat on his ass, giving him a black eye that he would carry with him into the next weeks of TV. He would show up on Monday Night Raw with like a bunch of makeup on his face to try to hide his black eye. But yeah, that was nice. But yeah, the end of episode 3, it's a case of Vince could see that, hey, my talent's being rated. I'm losing stars. Oh man, this is bad. This is bad. Let me try to keep whatever stars I got. Let me try to keep Bret Hart, give him this money. And after he did it, it's like, wait a minute, what the fuck did I just do? Did I just promise this man money I don't have? We can't afford to keep this guy. This is ridiculous. Oh, he's got the belt now. We got to get this belt off him somehow. It's like, oh, whatever. Do what needs to be done. Even if it means screwing over a loyal employee, even if it means, vilifying myself in the eyes of these fans, outing myself as the owner, whatever I got to do. I'm going to get that belt off him. I'm going to get him out of here, and that'll be the end of it. He's just that kind of guy. It really, we all knew this. If you followed the story of the Montreal Screwjob, not like followed the story, but like if you know the story of the Montreal Screwjob, if you've seen Wrestling with Shadows, if you've heard any of the interviews since then, if you watch Dark Side of the Ring, you know this is what was going on. This is what's happening behind the scenes. This is who was involved, all this stuff. This is the reasoning behind it. The beef between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, the shifting tides of the Attitude Era, all that, all influenced by McMahon, affected by McMahon in their own ways. It was, yeah, it is what it is. What a third episode this was. It certainly got a lot bite to it. It's one of the more interesting of the episodes because it starts on the WCW side of things, then shifts over to the WWE side of things. And I recall somewhere that apparently like Eric Bischoff said that Vince ripped him off with the whole evil boss gimmick because he was like, yeah, Vince McMahon was pretty good at the evil boss thing, but like, come on, I did it first. A lot of stuff WWE was doing was derivative of what WCW was doing. Because DX, in his eyes, was derivative of the NWO. Mr. McMahon was just derivative of Eric Bischoff siding with the NWO. And Vince's view on the idea was like, you did it first? Okay. But we both know who did it better. And I don't want to agree with McMustache on a lot of things or anything, but like, he's got a point on that. So far, I gotta say, of these 3 episodes, I really enjoyed the style they took. The images, the video footage. It's it's well timed, well edited, with all the cuts they've been using. Like Vince will say something and it'll cut to a piece of footage, either relating to that'll either prove him right on what he said, or he'll say something and it'll immediately show a piece of footage that contradicts it. All the talking heads really do help. It shows that they contacted like a wide breadth of people, not just within the WWE, but also people who are like analysts or WWE historians per se. And you have the people who've been on WWE TV, people who've worked in WCW, people like who cover wrestling. You have just so many eyes on there's so many different eyes on the product, so you need people from different walks of life and different fields to speak on the product. Even there was this one dude who was a business guy that Vince McMahon worked with on the XFL. He spoke on this, and it's not just covering the WWE, it's covering Vince McMahon, the person. And you have to have all these different people from all these different fields, because Vince McMahon, as Mr. McMahon, both on TV and Vince McMahon behind the scenes, was a lot more than just one thing. So he covered all these different fields, from the sporting side of things, the business side of things, the entertainment side of things. Okay, not sporting side, the athletic side. All this stuff he covered, he influenced, he affected, he changed, he tore down. It was, you know, everything has been significantly altered or affected in some way by Vince McMahon in the different ways that it has. And you need people to speak on those different ways, to be representative of those different people, places, and things. That is a good way to do this, as opposed to just, yeah, we're going to interview people from WWE and we're going to interview the people that like have nothing but nice things to say about Vince McMahon. Like it's just, yeah, it's not that. Everyone here had something nice to say, but had something positive to say about McMahon. But it's clear that if there was anything negative, they would say it. And this isn't just, oh yeah, this isn't Netflix joining the Vince Kiss My Ass Club. This is them doing a documentary on the dude and covering both sides of the divide, both good, bad, and in the coming episodes, we will see just the outright ugly that this man has to offer. That we've seen the peaks this man can rise to, and in the coming episodes of Moonlight Kingdom Review, we are going to witness just the depths of how low this man can sink. Right here on Moonlight Kingdom Reviews. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Folks, I'm out.